Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Containers on App Service Tips and Tricks session. My name is Guy Barrette. I'm a dev coach trainer based in Montreal, Canada. You can reach me at my Twitter handles, Guy Barrette, or my company, Kate's Online, or you can send me an email at kubernetesacademy.online or take a look at my offering on Kubernetes Academy Online. On a daily, my daily job is to teach Docker, containers, Kubernetes, either through virtual classes or using self-paced. I have the same offering as self-paced courses. And if you're interested in learning more about containers, Docker, Kubernetes, all that cool stuff, you can save $10 on my self-paced courses using this code user group. So I have a fundamental course, one on Azure, one on Linux, and another one on DigitalOcean. Okay. Azure App Service. Let's do a recap. You must be familiar with the concept of app service. You can host web applications on app service, .NET Core applications, PHP, Java, Ruby, all that cool stuff. But you may not be aware that you can run also containers in app service. So that's what we'll focus on at this session with a series of cool tips and tricks. Now, what are the app service benefits? Well, you can run either Windows or Linux applications on app service. Uh, since it's a platform as a service offering, well, you don't have to care about the patching the OS. It's done for you by the infrastructure itself. You get high availability, automated scale in, scale out with a load balancer. So all that cool stuff is built in the platform. It's compliant for all kind of compliance, PCI, SOC, ISO. And what is exactly web app for containers? Well, it's app service basically, but where you can run um, containers with an integration on the Docker registry, for example, Docker Hub or Azure Container Registries. So you can pull your images from these registries. You can run a single Docker image, so only one container. That's possible, but it's also possible to run multi-container application using Docker Compose. And we'll take a look briefly at this concept in a couple of our tips and tricks. But the next session, Justin has a full session about Docker Compose, running Docker Compose on app service. All right. Well, you can run either Linux containers or also Windows containers. And what's cool about running Windows containers on App Service is that you can go around some of the limitations of App Service. So App Service is a sandbox. When you deploy your app, you can't install drivers. You can't install COM objects or register COM objects. All these tools you can't install. You need to provision a virtual machine to do that. But with a Windows container, well, you can install that inside your Windows container. Let's say you're dependent on some kind of a COM object and you need to register that. Well, you can do that inside your container and then deploy that container and run it on app service. So it's a great way to go around some of the limitation. Well, not the limitation, but sometimes seen as the limitation of a app service sandbox, basically. All right, let's create an app service. We'll start. We'll go to the Azure portal and we'll create a simple web app running an Nginx web server. So I'll click on click a resource, and from the search box, sorry, I'll type web app for, and yeah, we see web app for containers. This is what I'll select. I'll click on create. Okay, I'll create a new resource group. So let's say Philly. Cool. And Philly demo, is that taken? No. Okay. GB, my initials. That should work. All right. Now, by selecting web app for containers instead of the standard web application, you see that Docker containers in the published setting here is selected by default. Well, that's one of the difference, basically. Instead of being by default on code, where you can upload your .NET Core code, PHP, Java, whatever, well, this is selected by default for you. Next, DOS, we can select Linux or Windows. Linux with .NET Core, that's super cool. We can select our region. Let's say I'll select here Canada Central is closest to me. And what I'll do, I'll create a new app service plan. I'll call that Philly, whoops, P, yeah, and leave the default size. So that's the VM that will run my container. Next, in the third step, we have the Docker options here. So here, I can select either single container or Docker Compose. So if I plan to only deploy one container, I select single container. We'll come back to Docker Compose a little bit later. And here in the image source, you can select your image source where the container image is stored. So here, either in Azure Container Registry, Docker Hub, or a private registry. I'll select Docker Hub, and the access type is public. I don't need to authentify, and we'll simply run the Nginx web server here. So the image that will be pulled from the Docker registry is Nginx. I can click here on review and create. That's the only options that we wanted to set. I'll click on create, and that should take a moment or two. The VM will be provisioned, and then when my app service is configured, app service will pull the image from the Docker Hub registry and run that image. So it should take a 30 seconds, something like that. Oh, already that was fast. I'll click on go to resource, and here I have my my app service basically running a container. Let me click on this link. And there you go. Nginx running in a container inside, well, run by app service, basically. So instead of deploying my compile code to app service, what I've done, well, what we can do is deploy or create a container, deploy the code there, and push that to a container registry, and then configure app service to run our container here. Pretty cool, super simple. And let's get back here and let's start our tips and tricks. All right. My container does not listen on port 80. Tip number one, you can map a port different than the default port 80 in app service. So When you configure your container, you can set a port that the container will listen on. By default, it's port 80, but you can set it to port 8080, let's say. Now, App Service listens on port 80. Is there a way around that? Yes, by mapping a port here. So what you do, you click on the configuration menu in the left, and you add a new application setting. And the application setting name is websites_port, and you set it to the port your container is listening to. In my case, 8080. So websites_port, that's a magic string. Basically, it's a built-in application setting in App Service here. So when I created my container, I set it to listen on port 8080, and using this website port, App Service will listen on port 80 and route the call, the traffic basically, on port 8080 to my container. Okay. My container does not start. How can I troubleshoot that? Tip number 2, you can troubleshoot startup events using the startup logs. And these are super, super important. You click in the deployment section, you click on Deployment Center, and then Logs here. And you'll have the App Service logs that will be displayed here. Now, very important here. These logs are created by App Service for when it tries to run your container, right? These are not application logs. So these are the logs that App Service creates for you to troubleshoot in case something goes bad. And there's tons of cool information here. Let's say here, I can see that App Service is pulling my image from Docker Hub for my organization Case Academy here, and the image name. I can see that the image was pulled successfully, and I can see the Docker run command that App Service runs basically to execute my container. So these logs are super important. The first thing, if your container does not start, you have some issues, make sure that you take a look at these logs because you'll be able to see maybe what's wrong. Take a look at the Docker run command to see if all the stuff that needs to be passed to your container is correctly configured here. All right. And we can take a look at these. If I, let me go here. We'll just take a quick look. So if I click here on Deployment Center, if I click here on Logs, I can see the startup logs. I can see if I go up a little bit. I've been running this for a couple of days, and you can see here, pulling image, all that good stuff. If there's an error, you would see the error displayed them, and then you can do your troubleshooting. All right. Now, where are the application logs? Well, the logs that we just saw were the logs from App Service. Now you can enable and you can stream the application logs. That's tip number 3. So if your app output to the console or the standard out basically in Linux, well, you can take a look at these logs. So what you need to do is in the left menu, in the monitoring section, you click on App Service Logs, and you enable file system here. And then you can set some quota, retention period, and that's it. Your application logs are enabled. And from there, you can click in the left menu on log stream, and the logs will be streamed right into the portal. So that's pretty cool. And if you want to stream these logs from a terminal, well, you can do it using the AZ web app log tail and the name of the web app and the resource group, and the logs will be streamed right into your console. So here, let me pull my my terminal here. I have this command. Let me just. So I have this web application, and the logs will be streamed. If I create a little bit of traffic here, we should see stuff. Whoops, we should see stuff happening. Maybe if I click here. Do I have the right one? Yeah, okay. Refresh, maybe. Refresh, a few refreshes. Yeah, okay, here they are. Cool. That worked. Pretty cool that displaying or streaming these logs right into a terminal window. Cool. All right. Next, I need to troubleshoot app service. What can I do? Well, you can use the advanced tools. In the left menu, in the development tools section, you click on advanced tools and then click on the go link. That will pop a new window. So let's do that. Let's see what's available in this window. So let me scroll down a little bit. Advanced tools, go. That open a new window, and from there have some basic information here about my app service, basically. But I can click here on environment and get a list of system information, sorry, and some app settings. So these are super important. We'll take a look in a few seconds at ways to pass environment variables to our container. But here you can make sure that, let's say here I have a app setting hello world. We'll see that this will be passed as an environment variable in our container. But you can troubleshoot to make sure that everything's okay, right? You can click here on bash, and you can list the folder. You can look at the logs. So let's say cd log files ls. You can let's say, can I do that? And I'll try to cat this. Right, you can display them. So you can do a little bit of troubleshooting if you're stuck. Well, if something's wrong and it's 11 p.m., you're at a friend's house and you need to do a little bit of troubleshooting, you can do that. If I click on log stream, that's another way that you can stream the logs. So there's three methods right into the portal that we saw earlier, inside the terminal and inside this Kudu app service tool here. Last thing here, you can SSH on your right into your container. If I click on this, okay, doesn't work. Okay, that will be tip number 12. We'll see later on how to enable SSH, but by default, this is not working here. All right. What's next? I need to set some environment variables. Tip number 5. Well, you simply create the environment variables by using application settings. You click on configuration and you add a key value pair, and this will be injected as an environment variable inside your containers. So it's super, super easy. Let's go back here. Let's click on configuration. Right, I have my hello application setting here with a value of world. And we saw earlier that if I open again the advanced tools, environment, here's my environment variable, basically. So here, hello world, yeah. So super easy. But what if you need to pass these environment variables not from application settings, but from key vault secrets? That's our tip number 6. You can set environment variables from key vault. And there's 3 steps basically that you need to do. You first need to create a managed identity. So for your app service, you need to create that managed identity. Next, you need in Key Vault to create an access policy, basically grant, let's say, read access to that managed identity. And the third step is to simply create an environment variable that will pull the secret here from Key Vault. How do we do that? Well, step number 1, in App Service, you click on Identity in the left menu, and then you turn the status of the system assigned identity to on, and you save. That's it, that's all. It's as easy as that. Next, in Key Vault, you create your secret, and you create an access policy. So in the step number 1, you click on access policies and then add a new access policy. And from there, you can set an access policy on different kind of objects, the keys, secrets, and certificate. In our case, we need to pull a secret from the key vault. So we set the permission on secret, and here in the Dropbox, you select the required permissions. So here I only want to read, basically. So I select get and list only. I don't want that managed identity to delete or create a new secret. Next, just below the drop boxes that we saw in the, you need to select your service principal or the managed identity, basically. So you click on the non-selected link, and from there you search for the application name, and it will be displayed here. You can select it. So we're done in Key Vault. Back in App Service, you create a new application setting. Here it's called from KV, and you need to pass some kind of I don't know how to call that, a secret key or something like that, but it starts with Microsoft Key Vault, and the secret URI, is the URL of the Key Vault. So Key Vault name .vault.azure.net / in green the type of objects. In our case, it's a secret / in blue, the secret name. So you paste that as the value, and that's it. Inside your container, this will be injected as an environment variable inside your container. So it's super cool. If we go back here and take a look at the configuration, the app settings, I already built everything. Here's my from KV application setting. And if I click on the value, well, it's that syntax here that is displayed. And if I don't have, let's say I'm a dev and I don't have access to the key vault, well, I will never see the secret value, basically. If I have access to the web application in the portal, let's say the app service, I will only see this. That's pretty cool. Okay. Next, deploying just one container is a waste of resource. Let's say you provision an app service plan with you have 12 gigabytes of memory, X number of virtual CPUs, and you deploy a single container in there. Well, it can be a waste of resource. You can pack more containers using Docker Compose. So what you need to create is a Docker Compose file. This is what we're seeing in the left, at the left of the screen. We have two services, and each of these services is a container. So let's say Azure Vote Front. Here we have the image location. And this will be our web application, basically. And we configure the ports that the container will listen on. Here it's listening externally on port 80 and internally also on port 80. And we have a second container here that is a Redis cache that is not exposed externally on the internet. So the only container here that will be exposed or seen from the internet is the web front end, and these two will live in a kind of a virtual network. They'll be able to see each other and communicate with each other. So the web front end can call the Redis cache here. How do we upload this Docker Compose file? It's super simple. Remember when I created earlier our first application, I selected single container. Well, you simply select in the option drop down, Docker Compose, and then you upload your Docker Compose file here. That's it. It's as simple as that. The other steps are exactly the same here. So Justin, in the next presentation, will go deeper in this topic here. I need to expose the other containers on the web. So let's say we are deploying a Docker Compose application with multiple APIs. Let's say I have two APIs, and I need to expose them on the web. How can I do that? Well, you can use a reverse proxy like Nginx to achieve this. How does that work? Well, the reverse proxy is illustrated here in green, and it will receive the calls from the web. So this one will be listening on, let's say, on port 80, and through configuration, the traffic will be routed on, let's say, these two APIs, LO1 and LO2. So let's take a look at the Docker Compose file on the right. I have here my reverse proxy, which is my Nginx image. It's listening on port 80. And I have two other services, LO1 and LO2, right? And each run the LO image here. And basically by true configuration, in the Nginx configuration, what we need to do is, let's say in the URL, we define a route, and then the calls will be routed to the both APIs here, either LO1 or LO2. Whoops. Let's take a look at some file, maybe that to make the everything clearer. All right. So I'm in VS Code, and here's my Docker Compose file. Here's my reverse proxy and my two APIs, basically LO1 and LO2. So I need to create that Nginx reverse proxy, and I need to create some kind of configuration so it works. So I have a config file here for Nginx, and basically, without going through much detail, here, if in the URL we have the LO string, well, the call will be forwarded to the LO1 container. And if we have bonjour in French, hello in French, we forward the call to the LO2 container. And you need to build an image with this configuration, and this is what you'll deploy basically. So you need to pre-build that image, and then deploy that. So if we go back here, I think I have. Where it is? Did I started it? Maybe not. Let me just go back to my resource group. Here it is. Okay. I didn't set a default route, so it's failing basically here. But if I type hello, the call is routed to the first container. URI is hello. Let's say the server's name ends with 7. That's the container ID. And if I type instead of hello, if I type bonjour, see we reach a different container here. So LO1 and LO2. Any question? So there's a question here. Do you use App Service instead of Kubernetes for simplicity, or if there are other benefits? What about the cost? Great question. My answer to that is super simple. Different type of workloads require different type of service. I compare App Service to a small hammer, right? We have different type of nails, and App Service is great for running single and multiple containers. That's a light hammer. And we have also the sledgehammer, which would be Kubernetes. Kubernetes is a complete orchestrator, which offer more benefits, but comes at a cost of complexity also. So we have the small hammer for the small workloads and the big hammer basically for the larger workloads. I don't know if this answered your question. Cost can be also less than running a full-blown Kubernetes cluster also. Okay. How are we doing on time? Not bad, not bad. Okay. I need to persist files outside the containers. So containers are ephemeral. So you don't usually save information inside your container, because if your container restart, the information that you saved inside your container will be lost. So tip number 9, you can save or persist data inside the app service virtual machine. So there's a functionality of app service called persistent storage. You can it's enabled by default, and there's a switch in application setting that's built in app service that's called websites enable app service storage. That's quite long. That you can set to true. By default, it's false, and this will let your files be persist up between app restarts. What's cool is that you can use an environment variable that will be injected inside your container. It's called Web App Storage Home, and this will be mapped to the home folder of app service, and you'll be able to use that to store your file, read and write your files. So here, to do that, you need to have a Docker Compose file, even though you have only one container. So here in this example, we have the Docker Compose file with a single container, but we're defining a volume, and in yellow, the first part of the yellow part is the Web App Storage Home environment variable that will point to for the root home folder. And then you can specify a folder name. And in green, that's the mapping. So inside your container, your code will see this web app storage folder and treats it just like a normal folder, basically. So that's cool. You can do that like this, or if you want to, you can also use Azure Storage to store your file. So if you want to read and write to Azure Storage, you can do that by adding a path, mapping a path to either blobs or files, Azure blobs and Azure files. So that's pretty cool. How do you do that? It's super simple. You click on configuration in the left menu of your app service. Step 2, you click on path mappings, and you add a new storage mount. The top one is blob. So we give it a name. We select our storage account, saying it's a blob here. We select the blob container, and we type a path or a folder name, sorry, that your code will see as a local folder. Same thing for the Azure files here. Now, be aware that the blob, mounting a blob like that, the folder will be read-only. So you can't write using this pattern here. But Azure files will be read-write. Okay. Oops. So let's head here. And let's go back here. In the configuration, I have my path mappings that I created earlier. So if I click on edit, I have my name. It's using a blob, and there's a big warning here. Mounted blob containers are read-only. And what's super cool is that your code doesn't need any kind of SDK to communicate with Blob Storage or Azure files. This my blob folder here will be seen just like a regular local folder inside your container. That's super cool. No SDK needed inside your container. And from there, yeah, this is Cure Demo 1. If I click here in the left menu on File System Browser, I can see my blobs, my file. If I select this, right, I can retrieve this beautiful kitty, right, from it, and it comes from Blob, and the files, they come from Azure files. So that's pretty cool, and it keeps your code super simple also, because you don't need any SDK here. All right. How can I easily deploy new versions of my containers? Well, let's say you created a small change inside your container. You deployed a new image in Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry. You want to is there a way to pull that automatically, to pull that change? Well, yes, you can enable continuous deployment. You click in the left menu on Deployment Center, and there's a switch called Continuous Deployment that is off by default that you can turn on. Now, what would happen in the background is that a webhook will be created between the container registry and app service, and when you'll deploy or push a new version of an image on your container registry, the webhook will kick in, and then app service will pull the new image and run your new image. So be aware, just to be clear, that this is not a full CI/CD pipeline. It's kind of a basic way to deploy automatically new versions of your container images here. Also, be aware that when this will happen, well, app service needs to first to pull the new image. It needs to shut down the current image and run the new image. So you'll experience maybe a few seconds to a minute of downtime during that time. So be aware of that. All right. Hey, this is our latest tip. How can I connect, sorry, using SSH? That's tip number 12. You can open an SSH session using a secure tunnel. We saw earlier in the advanced tool when I click on the SSH tab that didn't work. Well, for good reason. First, you need to install an SSH service inside your container. Most runtime containers will not have such a service pre-installed. So you need to install one. Now, is it a good idea? Maybe, maybe not. Because you're opening, maybe you're widening the surface attack of your application. So if you don't need SSH, don't install an SSH service. But if needed, either make sure that the container image that you'll use as an SSH service install, or configure a new image with an SSH service. Now, you need to do some configuration. In the Azure documentation, the steps are clearly written. I'll show you the web page where you can get that information. And from there, once everything is installed, you deploy your container, you need to open a secure tunnel. So that's great because by default, it's like SSH is not open widely. You really need to authentify to Azure and then create that secure tunnel to be able to create that SSH session. So here, let's say I've configured my container, my image. It's running in Azure correctly. The first thing I need to do is create that secure tunnel by using the AZ web app create remote connection command. Sorry. With the subscription name, resource group, and the app name. And then once this secure tunnel is created, you can use the SSH tool to connect to to open a session. This first secure tunnel command will also generate a dynamic port, and that port, you need to pass it to the SSH command here. So here we see two terminals. The first one where I ran the create remote connection command, and you see opening tunnel on port 52552. So this is random. This will change. And in that second terminal, I use the SSH tool and log as root with localhost, but with this port. And now you can start typing commands. You're connected. You're inside your container. Basically, you can type ls, look at the logs, and so on and so on. So that's possible. Let me just go here. We have just a few seconds. Yeah. Let me go back to my resource group here. SSH demo. And if so, in this web app, I deployed a container with the SSH service installed and configured. Now I can click on Advanced Tools. I can click on Go. And let's see if I click on SSH, will that work? Ta-da! That worked. Remember earlier when I clicked on the SSH in the first demo that didn't work? Well, this one worked. So I can type ls, I can take a look at the files, do some troubleshooting, and so on here. And and I'm going to paste this into the chat if you're interested. This is the documentation page where in Azure where they show you exactly what to configure. So it's not like easy like that. You need to follow these steps. But if you want to enable SSH, that's possible. All right. All right, that's it. 12 cool app service tips and tricks. Hopefully you learn a thing or two, even though you already are deploying containers on app service. Hopefully you learn a few tips here. So any questions? We're good?
Thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you.